Hello, Readers of the Future. I'm Endragh. We're continuing with more of The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. Last time we found out that Rincewind and Two Flower have been brought back to the world by the the book of spells and stuff like that. And they've met a gnome. So that's fun. He's just suffering from reality shock, said Rincewind. You haven't got a red hat by any chance? Wheat? Just a thought. I should be doing a weird voice for this, but I don't have any. I know where there's some food for biggers, said the gnome, and shelter too. It's not far. Rincewind looked at the lowering sky. The daylight was draining out of the landscape, and the clouds looked as if they had heard about snow and were considering the idea. Of course, people who lived in mushrooms couldn't necessarily be trusted, but right now a trap baited with a hot meal and clean sheets would have had the wizard hammering to get in. They set off. After a few seconds, the luggage got carefully to its feet and started to follow. Psst! It turned carefully, little legs moving in a complicated pattern, and appeared to look up. Is it good being joinery? Said the tree anxiously. Did it hurt? The luggage seemed to think about this. Every brass handle, every knothole, radiated extreme concentration. Then it shrugged its lid and waddled on. The tree sighed, and shook a few dead leaves out of its twigs. Okay, there is another note here. And I don't know if I should read it or not. I don't know where it goes to either. Okay. Oh, I know where it is. Oh, okay. That one I'm not going to read because it's about measurement. Okay. The cottage was small, tumbled down, and as ornate as a doily. Some mad whittler had got to work on it, Rincewind decided, and had created terrible havoc before he could be dragged away. Every door, every shutter had its cluster of wooden grapes and half-moon cutouts, and there were massed outbreaks of fretwork pine cones all over the walls. He half expected a giant cuckoo to come hurtling out of it. He half expected a giant cuckoo to come hurtling out of an upper window. Yeah. What he also noticed was the characteristic greasy feel in the air. Tiny green and purple sparks flashed from his fingernails. Strong magic field, he muttered. 100 millithems at least, and that's the note. It was mostly size-wise. It's just, yeah. It's a basic unit of magical strength. Okay. There's magic all over the place, said Swirls. An old witch used to live around here. She went a long time ago, but the magic still keeps the house going. Here, there's something odd about the door. That door, said Two Flower. Why would a house need magic to keep it going? Said Rincewind. Two Flower touched the wall gingerly. It's all sticky. Nougat, said Swirls. Good grief, a real gingerbread cottage? Oh, sorry, wrong voice. Good grief, a real gingerbread cottage. Rincewind, a real... Rincewind nodded glumly. The confectionery school of architecture, he said. It never caught on. He looked suspiciously at the licorice door knocker. It sort of regenerates, said Swirls. Marvelous, really. You just don't get this sort of place nowadays. You just can't get the gingerbread. Really? Said Rincewind gloomily. Come on in, said the gnome. But mind the doormat. Why? Candy floss. Yes, they're in a gingerbread house now. And that's my Swirls voice, so heads up. The great disc spun slowly until its tolling sun and daylight pooled in hollows and finally drained away as the night fell. In his chilly room in Unseen University, Trimon pored over the book, his lips moving as fingers traced the unfamiliar ancient script. He read that the Great Pyramid of Torst, now long vanished, was made of 1,003,010 limestone blocks. He read that 10,000 slaves had been worked to death in its building. He learned that it was a maze of secret passages. Their walls reputedly decorated with the distilled wisdom of ancient Torst. He read that its height plus its length divided by half its width equaled exactly 1.67563, or precisely 1,237.9871257 times the difference between the distance to the sun and the weight of a small orange. He learned that 60 years had been devoted entirely to its construction. It all seemed, he thought, to be rather a lot of trouble to go to just to shape an. It all seemed, he thought, to be rather a lot of trouble to go to just to sharpen a razor blade. And in the forest of Skund, Tuflar and Rincewind settled down to a meal of gingerbread mantelpieces and a thorough and thought longingly of pickled onions. And far away, but set as it were on the collision course, the greatest hero the disc ever produced. And far away, but set as it were on a collision course, the greatest hero the disc ever produced rolled himself a cigarette, entirely unaware of the role that lay in store for him. It was quite an interesting tailor-made. It was quite an interesting tailor-made that he twirled expertly between his fingers because, like many of the wandering wizards from whom he had picked up the art, he was in the habit of saving dog ends in a leather bag and rolled them into fresh smokes. The impeccable law of avengers therefore therefore dictated that some of the tobacco had been smoked almost continuously for many years now. The thing he was trying unsuccessfully to light was, well, you could have coated roads with it. So great was the reputation of this person that a group of nomad barbarian horsemen had respectfully invited him to join them as they sat around a horse-churned fire. The nomads of the Hub region usually migrated rimward for the winter, and these were part of a tribe who had pitched their felt tents in the sweltering heat wave of a mere -3 degrees, and were going around with peeling noses and complaining about heat stroke. The barbarian chieftain said, "What then are the greatest things that a man may find in life?" This is the sort of thing you're supposed to say to maintain stepicade in a barbarian circle. The man on his right thoughtfully drank his cocktail of merry milk and snow-cat blood, and spoke thus: "The crisp horizon of the steeps, the wind in your hair, a fresh horse under you." The man on his left said, "The city of the White Eagle in the heights, the fall of snow in the forest, a true arrow in your bow." The chieftain nodded and said, "Surely it is the sight of your enemy slain, the humiliation of his tribe, and the lamentations of his women." There was a general murmur of whiskey. This is why I have the pug here. There was a general murmur of whiskey approval at this outrageous display. Then the chieftain turned respectfully to his guest, a small figure carefully warming his chilblains by the fire, and said, "But our guest, whose name is legend, must tell us truly, what is it that a man may call the greatest thing in life?" The guest paused in the middle of another unsuccessful attempt to light up. "What's that?" he said toothlessly. "I said, what is it that a man may call the greatest thing in life?" The warriors leaned closer. This should be worth hearing. The guest thought long and hard, and said, with deliberation, "Hot water, good dentistry, and soft lavatory paper." Yeah, that's what I'm doing for that voice. Trust me, I know. Brilliant octarine light flared in the forge. Galder weatherwax stripped to the waist, his face hidden by a mask of smoked glass, squinted into the glow, and brought a hammer down with surgical precision. The magic squealed and withered in the tongs, but still he worked it, drawing it into a line of antagonizing fire. A floorboard creaked. Gawler had spent many hours tuning them, always a wise precaution with an ambitious assistant who walked like a cat. D-flat. That meant he was just to the right of the door. Ah, Trimon, he said, without turning, and noted with some satisfaction in the faint indrawing of breath behind him. Good of you to come. Shut the door, will you? Trimon pushed the heavy door, his face expressionless. On the high shelf above him, various bottled impossibilities wallowed in their pickle jars and watched him with interest. Like all wizards' workshops, the place looked as though a taxidermist had dropped his stock in a foundry and then had a fight with a maddened glassblower, braining a passing crocodile in the process. It hung from the ceiling and smelt strongly of camphor. There were lamps and rings that Trimon itched to rub, and mirrors that looked as though they could repay a single glance. Looked as though they could repay a second glance. A pair of 7-league boots stirred restlessly in a cage. A whole library of grimoires, not, of course, as powerful as the Octave, but still heavy with spells, creaked and rattled their chains as they sensed the wizard's covert glance on them. The naked power of it all stirred him as nothing else could, but he deplored the scruffiness and Galdur's sense of theoretics. For example, he happened to know that the green liquid bobbing mysteriously through a maze of contoured pipework on one of the benches was just green dye with soap in it, because he'd bribed one of the servants. One day, he thought, it's all going to go. Starting with that bloody alligator. His knuckles whitened. Well now, said Galder cheerfully, hanging up his apron and sitting back in his chair with the lion paw arms and duck legs. You sent me this Mimi thing? Trimon shrugged. Memo. I merely pointed out, Lord, that the other orders have all sent agents to Skund Forest to recapture the spell, while you do nothing, he said. No doubt you will reveal your reasons in good time. Your faith shames me, said Galder. The wizard who captures the spell will bring great honor on himself and his order, said Trimon. The others have used boots and all manners of elsewhere spells. What do you propose using, master? Did I detect a hint of sarcasm there? Absolutely not, master. Not even a smidgen? Not even the merest smidgen, master. Good, because I don't propose to go. Galder reached down and picked up an ancient book. He murmured a command and it creaked open. A bookmark suspiciously like a tongue flicked back into the binding. He fumbled down beside his cushion and produced a little leather bag of tobacco and a pipe the size of an inserator, with all the skills of a terminal nicotine addict. He rubbed a nut of tobacco between his hands and tamped it down into the bowl. He snapped his fingers and fire flared. He sucked deep, sighed with satisfaction, looked up. Still here, Trimon? You summoned me, master, said Trimon levelly. At least that's what his voice said. Deep in his gray eyes was the faintest glimmer that said he had a list of every patronizing twinkle, every gentle reproof, every knowledge-knowing glance, and for every single one Galder's living brain was going to spend a year in acid. Oh, yes, so I did. Humor the the memory of an old man, said Galder pleasantly. He held up the book he had been reading. I don't hold with all this running about, he said. It's all very dramatic, mucking about with magic carpets and the like, but it isn't true magic to my mind. Take 7-league boots, now. If men were meant to walk 21 miles at a step, I am sure God would have given us longer legs. Where was I? I am not sure, said Trimon coldly. Ah, yes. Strange that we could find nothing about the Pyramid of Tors in the library. You would have thought there'd be something, wouldn't you? The librarian will be disciplined, of course. Galder looked sideways at him. Nothing drastic, he said. withhold his bananas, perhaps? They looked at each other for a moment. Galder broke off first. Looking hard at Trimon always bothered him. It had the same disconcerting effort as glazing into a mirror and seeing no one there. Effect, by the way. Anyways, he said, strangely enough, I found assistance elsewhere. In my own modest bookshelves, in fact. The Journal of Scourge Casterbasket, the founder of our order. You, my keen young man, who would rush off so soon. Do you know what happens when a wizard dies? Any spell he has memorized say themselves, said Trimon. It is one of the first things we learn. In fact, it is not true of the original 8 great spells. By dint of close study, Skelter learned that a great spell will simply take refuge in the nearest mine open and ready to receive it. Just push the big mirror over here, will you? Galder got to his feet and shuffled across to the forge, which was now cold. The stand of magic still withered, though, at once present and not present. At once present and not present, like a slit cut into another universe full of hot blue light. He picked it up easily, took a long bow from a rack, said a word of power, and watched with satisfaction as the magic grasped the ends of the bow, and then tightened until the wood creaked. Then he selected an arrow. Trimon had tugged a heavy, full-length mirror into the middle of the floor. When I am head of the order, he told himself, I certainly won't shuffle around in carpet slippers. Trimon, as mentioned earlier, felt that a lot could be done by fresh blood if only the dead wood could be removed. But just for the moment, he was generally interested in seeing what the old fool would do next. He may have derived some satisfaction if he had known that Galder and the Scourge Casterbasket change basket were both absolutely wrong. Galder made a few passes in front of the glass, which clouded over it and then cleared to show an aerial view of the Forest of Scold. He looked at it intensely while holding the bow, with the arrow pointed vaguely at the ceiling. He muttered a few words like, allow for wind speed of, say, 3 knots, and adjust for temperature, and then with a rather disappointing movement, released the arrow. If the law of action and reaction had anything to do with it, it should have flopped to the ground a few feet away, but no one was listening to them. With a sound that defies description, but which for the sake of completeness can be thought of basically as sprang, plus 3 days hard work in any decent with the sound that defies description, but which for the sake of completeness can be thought of basically as sprang plus 3 days hard work in any decent equipped radiophonic workshop, the arrow vanished. Galder threw the bow aside and grinned. Of course, it takes about an hour to get there, he said. Then the spell will simply follow the ionized path back here, to me. Remarkable, said Trimon, but any passing telepath would have read in letters Remarkable, said Trimon. Remarkable, said Trimon, but any passing telepath would have read in letters 10 yards high. If you, then why not me? He looked down at the cluttered workbench, when a long and very sharp knife looked tailor-made for what he suddenly had in mind. Violence was not something he liked to be involved in, except for at one removal. But the Pyramid of Trust had been quite clear about the reward for whoever brought all 8 spells together at the right time, and Trimon was not about to let years of painstaking work go for nothing because some old fool had a bright idea. Would you like some cocoa while we're waiting? Said Galder, hobbling across the room to the servant bell. Certainly, said Trimon. He picked up the knife, weighed it for balance and accuracy. I must congratulate you, master. I could see that we must all get up very early in the morning to get the better of you. Galder laughed, and the knife left Trimon's hand at such a speed that, because of the somewhat sluggish nature of Disclight, it actually grew a bit shorter and a little bit more massive as it plunged, with unerring aim, towards Galder's neck. It didn't reach. Instead, it swirled to one side and became a fast orbit, so fast that Galder appeared suddenly to be wearing a small metal collar. He turned around, and to Tremon it seemed that he had suddenly grown several feet taller and much more powerful. The knife broke away with a and shuddered into the door a mere shadow's depth from Trimon's ears. "Early in the morning," said Galder pleasantly. "My dear lad, you will need to stay up all night." "Have a bit more table," said Rincewind. "I guess we'll stop there before we get into Rincewind and Two Flower, because that's a good spot since there's a little break in the page. A little itty bitty break in the page. This way. There you go. So, we'll stop there." So I've been Endragh. That has been The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. So that's our main enemies? Question mark? That's at least Tremon and Galder. I don't know how long they'll stay or whatnot. Well, I do, but I don't remember, actually. I don't know how long these guys are going to stick around. It's been a really long time since I've read this book. Yeah. So that will be tomorrow's stuff. I don't really have anything else to say, so I have been Endragh. This has been The Light Fantastic. I hope I brought a smile to your face, and I will see you tomorrow night. Night-night, guys.